Hello, guys. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about my favorite book. It's not actually fiction. It's more like a business book. But before I kind of go into this story, I want to talk a little bit about another book, which is called Extreme Ownership, and it's written by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, and they're Navy SEALs. So it's also a very good book, and one of the chapters there, they kind of describe the situation where they were faced with friendly fire, and they got into this friendly fire situation. Hopefully, it was resolved, but the next day they actually had to do like a debrief for the generals or whoever. They talk in this in the extreme ownership about how they powered up their PowerPoint and started assembling slides and to kind of make their case and explain why this happened. And I was very surprised by that when I was reading this, and I thought, wow, so even at the battlefield, like in Afghanistan, you actually have to do presentations. It was very powerful to me, and I thought that the skill of making presentations is actually as important right now as if if you knew how to type. It's the same thing. So you need to be very careful how you do it and know how to do a very good persuasive presentation. So today I want to talk to you about this book. It's an HBR series, and it's called A Guide to Persuasive Presentations. So what's it all about? This is a book is written by Nancy Duarte, and basically she's like a speaking presentation coach. She has a bunch of books, she has her own company, and she teaches people how to do great presentations. She did a couple of TED Talks, so you can see them in the description and go check her out. She wrote this book based on her experience. What this book basically is a little guide that shows you how to create a presentation that people actually are going to listen to. Because often, and I'm sure everyone has been in those situations where you kind of watched the presentation and you see people falling asleep or browsing on their phones or talking or doing whatever, but not actually listening to what they're being presented. Nancy sort of gives advice and explains how you can avoid this and actually make a presentation that people are gonna listen to. So it's not a very long book. It's like 180 pages, but it's basically packed with incredible information. Everything that's there, it's very simple. It's not, it's not very like highbrow stuff, but few people actually use it in their work. So I just want to highlight how she explains you need to approach the presentation itself. So first of all, know about your audience. So this is something that's often overlooked, and she makes a point that you need to adapt your presentation to whoever you're talking to. So if it's an executive presentation, should be created, built one way. If it's for like students, it should be built another way, and the list kind of goes on and on. So knowing your audience is kind of like the main thing, and then you need to start thinking about it even before you come up with a presentation or the main idea of it. And the main idea is actually the second part. So before you kind of start crafting slides or thinking and so on, you need to figure out what's your main message is. Because if you don't know what is your main message, you're never going to be persuasive, because you don't really sound persuasive. You don't know what to persuade about. And once you figure out that message, and she kind of gives frameworks and ideas on how you can get to that idea. It's not like a very simple process, but it's kind of like a creative thing, and you need to kind of think a little bit, but you'll get there. And once you get the controlling, like the main idea, then you kind of start thinking about what are the facts and the different elements that support this. And this is incredibly important. So again, she gives different techniques. She explained how you need to look on different points, but some of the very interesting point that she makes, that you need to make a balance. You need to use two techniques. So first of all, you need to use data and emotion, and you need to use one and then another, one and then another, right? Because data is something that your like analytical part of your brain uses and wants to rely on, and emotion is like for the emotional part of the brain, where you just need to think about, okay, well, how does it make me feel? If it makes you feel good, then, or something, or some other, or scared or something, then it's all used for the persuasion, making sure that the message hits the target. And another interesting technique that she describes there is she wants you to use the roller coaster element. So basically she wants to use a slide to explain where you are now in your organization or whoever you're kind of talking to. And then she kind of explains where you can be or where you want to go. And then you basically build a roller coaster. You get there, but then you explain where you're now, where you want to go, where you're now, where you want to go. And this kind of builds the whole meat of the presentation, putting you from one point to another, one point from another. And through these very simple techniques, again, there's nothing, incredibly difficult there. You can actually build a very good presentation that hits all the targets, talks to the right audience, and at the same time helps you bring across the point of view that you have. Again, I'm not gonna kind of talk about all the details and all the little things there, because you really need to read it yourself. But I just want to highlight that she also explains how to build the slide. That's also one of the like a super important point. And the technique that she kind of gives is that when you're building a slide, you want to delete everything from the slide, so you not use a template, and then start thinking from there. That's actually a very good point, because once you have a template, it kind of limits you in the way of how you can present, and it limits you in the way of how you think. So if you just do it freely on your own, then you can basically do whatever you want and start thinking in more broader terms. And the other idea about slide that she kind of provided is that you can do a story from the titles of your slides. That's also a very interesting exercise, because if you have a story from the titles of your slides, it basically has a very concise message and the story that you're providing. And she kind of gives more and more of those ideas, and like a rule of thumb that there should be only one idea on a slide. And like from experience, I rarely see this. Most people try to cram as much information on the slide as possible. Again, for the sake of time, making sure that they kind of tell everything at the same moment, but it never really works. You have to be very strategic and thinking about what is your message, what do you want to convey, what kind of story do you want to put on your slide, and it shouldn't be, crowded. There shouldn't be a lot of stuff there. It should be very concise. And then she goes about the presentation itself, like how you should look, how you should present, what do you need to talk about, and how you need to kind of act on stage or wherever you're presenting. That's also a very important point, and one of the interesting bits there is that in one of the chapters she says that you need to be yourself. Basically, you need to be genuine, right? So you don't want to look like someone else. You don't want to be perceived as if you're acting, or if you're not something who you really are, because people really see this. And if you ever did any like acting classes or anything of that kind, people will definitely see when you're trying to act, so don't do that. Overall, I think that this is a great book. I bought it like for $5 or something on a thrift shop, and it literally helped me so much. I mean, it's incredible. It's one of the best books on the way how you can present. It's very simple, it's easy to read, and you can just use it as a guide when you're building any kind of presentation. So I encourage you to buy this, read this, and use it in your work every day, because you will return to this every day, and you will think about this every time you go on a presentation and see your colleagues or anyone else doing, you know, some kind of talk, trying to persuade you. And yeah, it will definitely change your perspective. Okay, well, thank you for joining me, and I'm hope that we will try to do more of these videos in the future.